Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine a classic fairy tale, right? Foundational piece of animation history.
Yeah, the big one.
Exactly. And it attempts this live action revival. But instead of, a grand premiere, it just becomes this masterclass in how not to make a movie. That's precisely what we're diving into today. The colossal misadventure of Disney's live action Snow White remake.
What's truly fascinating here, I think, is we're not just dissecting a bad film per se.
Right.
We're exploring a phenomenon. This deep dive isn't simply about what went wrong on screen, but like every single problem. Everything that plagued its production, its promotion, its public perception. We've gathered insights from a really detailed YouTube review and some additional context to sort of guide us through this incredible and, let's be honest, sometimes utterly baffling journey.
That's right. I mean, from casting controversies that just ignited these cultural firestorms, to on-set disasters, profound cultural clashes, even political minefields.
It had it all.
It really did, culminating in a film that, well, critics savaged and audiences ignored. So our mission today is to sift through this incredible stack of sources and really understand how.
How could it go so wrong?
Exactly. How can even the best laid schemes go so spectacularly awry? And what happens when a movie transforms into a public relations nightmare long before it ever even hits screen? You'll walk away not just informed, but hopefully with a clear sense of the sheer magnitude of this cinematic misadventure and maybe some surprising takeaways. #Tag1, the enduring legacy and the remake imperative.
Yeah.
So let's start where any good story does, at the beginning. Or maybe in this case, the original beginning.
The 1937 beginning.
Yes, Disney's animated classic, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Yeah.
It was just a groundbreaking adaptation of the Brothers Grimm tale. And when we say groundbreaking, we mean it really set an entirely new benchmark.
Absolutely. This wasn't just, a Disney film. It was the original Disney film.
The one that started it all.
It single-handedly launched Walt Disney, his nascent company, onto the global stage. It was one of the very first fully animated feature-length movies ever produced.
Huge risk at the time.
A massive, almost reckless gamble that paid off beyond anyone's wildest dream. In fact, it was so incredibly successful that when you adjust for inflation,
get this,
it still remains the highest grossing animated film this very day.
Wow. Nearly a century later.
Nearly a century of unparalleled box office dominance. That's saying something.
That's incredible staying power, and it speaks volumes about its cultural impact. Beyond the financial success, it was, widely acclaimed, often regarded as one of the most important movies of all time. It massively influenced the animation industry and effectively kickstarted what we now call the golden age of Disney animation.
Right.
So with that kind of cultural legacy, that artistic importance, any talk of a remake would surely come with an enormous amount of pressure to respect that original, wouldn't it?
Precisely. And this legacy provides really crucial context for understanding Disney's broader corporate strategy.
How so?
Well, over the past 80 years, we've seen a significant shift. The studio has largely moved away from the hand-drawn 2D animation that defined its...
Which is a shame in itself, but okay.
And embraced this new imperative. Live action and CGI remakes of their animated classics. Think of, Mulan, Aladdin, The Lion King. These are all part of this modern approach.
And let's be honest, many of these remakes, while often visually stunning in parts, have creatively ranged from, lackluster to outright dog shit, as our sources bluntly put it.
Yeah, that's one way to phrase it.
Yet, here's the surprising twist. They usually made money hand over fist, almost regardless of critical reception.
That's the business model, right?
Seems like it. So, when the announcement came in 2016 that Snow White was next, with Mark Webb attached to direct, known for films like 500 Days of Summer and The Amazing Spider-Man, the reaction was largely cynicism. Many perceived it as just expensive but creatively bankrupt slop.
Yeah, that sounds about right for the initial buzz. What this highlights is a fundamental tension. Why? Why would you even dare to remake something so iconic, so deeply embedded in culture?
Nani.
Well, the obvious, if unromantic, answer is financial. But with Snow White, the sheer weight of the original's legacy meant the studio was ice skating uphill from the very beginning.
A steep hill.
A very steep hill. The question wasn't just if it would be good, but could it ever possibly justify its existence in the shadow of such a monumental predecessor? #Tag2. Early casting choices and the first waves of uproar.
That uphill battle, as you mentioned, it really kicked into high gear almost immediately with the casting announcement.
Right away.
The reveal that Gal Gadot, a prominent actress in her own right, was cast as the evil queen. That caused more than a bit of head shaking.
That's right. The material we looked at indicates her casting was met with, let's say, skepticism, largely due to what was described as a well-earned reputation as a subpar actress. Yeah. You can find compilations online that speak to her perceived acting weaknesses, a perception that, fair or unfair, existed well before this project.
Got it. And just a quick note, her surname is D-O-T, Rachel, not Gadot.
Gadot, correct. It's often mispronounced.
Okay. But if Gal Gadot's casting raised eyebrows, the choice of Rachel Zegler as Snow White truly blew the lid off, just caused this multi-layered controversy that quickly became a cultural flashpoint.
It really...
And it all revolved around one pivotal phrase from the original story, the fairest in the land.
Indeed. That description is absolutely central to the entire narrative. It fuels the evil queen's jealousy, her murderous intent. Right. Now, Gal Gadot is, by conventional standards, exceptionally beautiful. Started her career as a model.
Okay.
So when Zegler was cast, some public discourse immediately questioned whether she truly embodied this fairest. This led to just a flurry of social media comments, memes, kicking off the first wave of public backlash.
And what's truly insightful here, I think, is how the movie's attempt to be progressive actually kind of undermined itself.
How do you mean?
Well, our sources reveal that the film tried to provide this true beauty comes from within explanation for Zegler's fairest label.
Ah, okay. Trying to modernize.
Right, but in doing so, it unintentionally highlighted the perceived physical difference between its lead, effectively accidentally throwing her under the bus in its attempt to be inclusive.
Ooh, that backfired.
It really did. It was a misstep that just amplified rather than diffused the initial debate.
And beyond the fairest debate, Zegler's casting ignited a much larger cultural fire. It transformed into a prominent battleground in the ongoing culture war. The decision to cast a Latina actress to play Snow White, a character whose skin is explicitly described as white as snow, immediately sparked charges of wokeness and political correctness gone mad.
The snow woke term.
Exactly. That term quickly trended.
And the arguments, they were wide-ranging, weren't they? From, outright racist vitriol, which is just deplorable, obviously.
Of course.
To more, let's say, nuanced concern. Many critics argued it was kind of lazy, an example of race-swapping characters, rather than investing in creating original diversity.
Right, that's a common argument.
And there were also fears the film would disrespect the original source material or become a vehicle for obnoxious mess.
It really echoed the whole controversy around Halle Bailey.
It did. It felt like round two, intensifying feelings on both sides.
And to try and mitigate the literal interpretation of the name, the film attempted to justify Zegler's character being called Snow White by claiming she was born during a snowstorm.
Which is different from the original.
Completely different from the Brothers Grimm tale, where her name was explicitly derived from her physical appearance: skin white as snow, lips red as blood, hair black as ebony.
So Disney's approach was?
Disney, for its part, pursued what they called progressive colorblind cast and pretty much attempted to brush off the negativity by simply ignoring it.
Which rarely works.
Rarely. Zegler herself publicly acknowledged the online anger, but somewhat controversially suggested the need to educate and love them critics in the right direction.
Ooh, yeah, that probably didn't help matters.
No. It became clear very quickly that the public perception of this film was already deeply, deeply fractured.
As if the initial casting wasn't enough to ignite a firestorm.
You'd think it would.
The controversy escalated significantly when it came to the other titular character, the Seven Dwarfs.
Ah, yes. The dwarf dilemma.
This situation put Disney squarely in the crosshairs of cultural critique from maybe an unexpected quarter at first.
This phase really kicked off with Game of Thrones star Peter Dinklage, arguably one of the most famous dwarf actors in the world.
Huge star.
He publicly lambasted Disney for what he saw as hypocrisy. He acknowledged Disney was very proud to cast a Latino actress, Snow White. But then he pointed out they were still telling the story of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which he controversially labeled a fucking backward story of the Seven Dwarfs living in a...
Wow. Okay, so he basically questioned Disney's selective progressiveness.
Pretty much. He wondered why they would seemingly make strides in one area while, in his view, reinforcing what he saw as demeaning stereotypes in another. He expressed concern that his own efforts to advance the cause through his career might have been in vain. He stated he found the decision nonsensical, even while offering, all love and respect to the actress and thought they were doing the right thing.
But his remarks, they ignited a shitstorm of their own, didn't they?
Oh, absolutely. Other dwarf actors and entertainers, figures like Hornswoggle, Wee Man from Jackass, Toontan, they quickly came forward to loudly...
So it wasn't a unified front?
Not at all. This revealed a really complex and nuanced issue within the community itself. It highlighted that there isn't a monolithic view on
That's a crucial point. Because on one hand, you have the perspective that, yeah, traditional dwarf roles, like fantasy dwarves or goblins, could be seen as pigeonholing.
Right, limiting.
But on the other hand, many argued that these roles, while maybe limited, provided a niche and consistent work in a highly competitive industry.
Exactly. The concern from these actors was that removing these types of might not lead to more diverse casting in other areas, but rather simply eliminate existing opportunities, leave many without work. Wee Man, for instance, spoke directly about, replacing jobs that people could have had.
And furthermore, many disagreed with Dinklage's assessment that the Seven Dwarfs were inherently demeaning in the first place.
Yeah, they highlighted the characters as heroes who took in and saved Snow White, viewing them as positive figures.
So Dinklage, having built this highly successful career partly from dwarf roles, was even accused by some, like Chuntan, of pulling up the ladder after him, calling his stance selfish.
Yeah, that criticism came up. He also faced criticism for not really clarifying his position and for, presuming to speak for an entire community.
So Disney found themselves in this unenviable bind, caught between these conflicting viewpoints.
Completely stuck in the middle.
Their response?
In response, they stated they would reevaluate the role of the dwarfs in light of sensitivity and take a different approach.
Okay.
This ultimately led to what our sources describe as a worst of all worlds solution.
Which was?
Replacing dwarf actors entirely with CGI magical creatures.
Not dwarves, magical creatures.
Well, exactly. The film even dropped "and the Seven Dwarves" from its title, carefully avoiding any on-screen reference to them as dwarves.
But then there was more confusion, right, with Martin Kleba.
Yeah, adding another Kleba, who reportedly voiced Grim, later claimed that motion capture and CGI were always the plan, predating Dinklage's public comment.
So Dinklage didn't actually cause the change.
If Kleba's account is true, then no, Dinklage's remarks didn't directly cause the change, though they certainly amplified the whole debate. But even for these CGI not dwarf, the motion capture artists were reportedly mostly non-dwarf actors.
Seriously?
Yeah, with Kleba being one of the few except this outcome struck many as daggeringly hypocritical for a company supposedly championing civic.
Because it still resulted in a loss of roles for dwarf actors.
Precise. A clear loss of potential roles.
So what this tells us is that the outcome pleased nobody.
Nobody. Disney still had magical dwarves, which is kind of what Dinklage complained about.
Right.
Dwarf actors lost jobs and potential stunt, and disability activists protested this erasure of ability representation.
And then there were those leaked photos.
Oh yeah. To make matters even more convoluted, behind-the-scenes photos leaked showing a group of bandits, including one dwarf character named Quig, played by a dwarf actor.
Leading to criticism that these were the replacements.
Exactly. Disney initially called these photos fake before backtrack, but in the end, these bandit characters, even with Quig, were described by insiders as pointless.
Pointless.
Yeah, taking time away from the central characters and having their roles drastically reduced anyway.
Right.
Ultimately, as our nobody won in that. Just to complete.
Yeah.
#4. A production plagued by external and internal woe.
Okay, so as if the casting and representation controversies weren't enough.
You'd think that would be the peak.
The actual production of Snow White seemed to be cursed by just this relentless series of external and internal woes, created a truly tumultuous environment even before the camera rolled.
Indeed. The film was already delayed by 2 years because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Principal photography finally started in March 2020.
And that delay wasn't just scheduling.
Yeah.
It cost money.
A lot of money. The strict safety measures implemented to combat rising COVID cases added further millions to the movie's budget, inflating costs significantly before a single usable frame was properly shot.
And then there were literal misfortune on set.
Like actual fire.
Yeah. One of the sets under construction at Pinewood Studios in England where they were filming actually caught fire.
Whoa.
Thankfully, no one was hurt, but as our sources put it, this was hardly an auspicious sign. It felt less like a film production and more like, a Greek tragedy unfolding in real time.
You're not wrong. The sheer confluence of just unfortunate events is almost unbelievable.
And there was that bizarre side drama involving Rachel Zegler in the Oscars, too.
Oh, right. Despite starring as Maria in Spielberg's West Side Story.
7 Oscar nominations for that film.
Exactly. Zegler initially did not receive an invitation to the 2022 Oscar ceremony.
Which is weird, right? For the star of a nominated film.
A highly unusual snub, especially considering the production studio, 20th Century Studios, which Disney owns, had tickets allocated.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The alleged reason.
An insider claimed the reason for her exclusion was that Disney didn't want to jeopardize the ongoing Snow White filming by allowing her to attend.
Seriously. They wouldn't let her go to the Oscars.
If true, this was widely seen as massively shitty and a classic Disney move. Some even drew parallels to how Walt Disney himself allegedly allegedly mistreated the original Snow White voice actress to maintain the magic.
Wow. Did she eventually go?
Yeah, after a public outcry, Zegler was eventually invited as a presenter, and she even made a humorous, self-aware joke about her last-minute invite during the broadcast.
Good for her. But the troubles just kept mounting, didn't they?
They only continued. The WGA and SAG-AFTRA strikes further compounded the delays, pushing the movie's release back another year from spring 2024 to 2025.
And on top of that, Disney wasn't happy with the film.
Apparently not. Disney was reportedly unhappy with how the movie had turned out, demanding extensive reshoots.
Which were then delayed by
the very strikes that had already pushed the film back created this frustrating cycle.
Unbelievable. And as if that wasn't enough,
there was more.
Gal Gadot experienced serious health complications late in her 4th pregnancy.
Oh, wow.
Leading to further, though completely understandable, delay. Thankfully, she and her daughter were okay.
Well, that's good news, at least.
Absolutely. But while reshoots aren't always a negative sign, sometimes they improve a film.
Right.
In this case, insiders claimed some cut content was better than what was left in the final version.
Really? Like what?
They even mentioned a deleted scene where Snow White almost fucking drowned.
Whoa. Okay.
It just paints this picture of a production scrambling to fix significant issues, often with questionable result. Indicates a deeper problem than just scheduling.
Definitely sounds like a chaotic set. Type 5. Marketing mishaps and then the buildup of public outcry.
So with all these production woes, all these controversies just simmering.
A boiling pot, really.
You'd think Disney would have been extra careful with how they presented Snow White to the public. Like, really manage the message.
You would hope so.
But instead, the marketing efforts turned into what our sources call a full-blown disaster class themselves.
Oh.
Only fueling the existing public outcry.
That's exactly right. The first real glimpse the public got, a teaser trailer released in August 2024. It was not well at all.
Understatement.
Pretty much. Our sources describe almost every aspect of it being savagely torn apart by the public. Just set this deeply negative tone right from the get.
And it only got worse from there.
Oh, yeah. The official trailer, which dropped in December, fared even more, faced relentless mockery for everything, the acting, the cost GI.
So even basic stuff wasn't landing.
Apparently not. The critical lesson here is that even fundamental elements like visual effects and character design failed to impress. One journalist even reported that his young son found the dwarves terrifying.
Terrifying. Not exactly the vibe you want for a Disney fairy tale.
Hardly the reaction you want for a family-friendly film, no.
And the public reaction was so bad that AI got involved.
Yeah, this is wild. The public's negative reception was so pronounced that AI-generated songs based on negative comments from the trailers garnered over 15 million views.
Get out. People made songs mocking the trailer.
They did. And it's a pretty damning indictment when AI-generated Snow White alternatives were reportedly received much better than Disney's official promotional.
That just shows a profound disconnect, doesn't it? Between the studio's vision and what the audience wanted or expected.
Absolutely. Think about that for a second. With an estimated $350 million investment that includes marketing.
$350 million.
Every piece of publicity seemed to generate just massive amounts of oof.
Not the buzz you're hoping for.
Not at all. You want your marketing to make your movie appealing, right? But this film struggled to connect by attempting to appeal to everyone, trying to tick every perceived progressive or modern box. It ended up not really speaking to anyone, severely hindering its ability to find a sympathetic audience, just couldn't find its footing. #tag sick. Rachel Zegler's public relations disaster.
Okay, so if the film's production and early marketing were troubled.
And they were.
Rachel Zegler's public comments proved to be, well, another disaster class, this time in public relations.
Yeah, her remarks really sparked widespread outrage. Became a lightning rod for criticism, creating significant brand damage for the film.
Where did it start?
It really kicked off at Disney's D23 Expo back in September 2020. Zegler made what were described as interesting comments, stating she was bringing a modern edge to Snow White because, quote, it's no longer 1937.
Okay, trying to frame it as an update.
Right. She, along with Gal Gadot, actually emphasized that Snow White is not going to be saved by the prince. And she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be. Clearly an attempt to differentiate the character, give her more age.
Okay, but she didn't stop there, did she?
No. In another interview, she called the original car extremely, particularly focusing on its love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Weird.
Ooh, strong words about a beloved class.
Very strong. She stressed that we didn't do that this time. These comments, as you can imagine, provoked an uproar from the anti-woke crowd.
Predictable, maybe.
But they were also eye-roll-inducing for many others. They perceived them as condescending and contemptuous.
Yeah, it raises that critical question for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Why are you involved in a remake if you seem to dislike the source material?
Exactly. And adding fuel to that fire, Zegler later revealed that she was actually scared.
Scared of it?
Yeah. Had only watched it once and never revisited Snow White again until she was working on the film.
Wow. Okay.
Which stood in stark contrast to Gal Gadot, who apparently spoke with reverence for the original.
So that comparison didn't help.
Not at all. For many, this was seen as hypocritical, a company and its star banking on a nostalgic, popular IP to make money, while simultaneously disrespect and changing it unnecessarily. The key takeaway is that delicate balance between modernizing a classic and completely alienating its original fanbase.
Which brings us to what some critics call the faux feminism debate surrounding her comments.
Right. Our sources highlight that some feminists actually denounced her statements.
Really? Why?
They argued that implying a woman's worth is tied to rejecting traditional gender roles, like being saved by a prince or wanting love, is actually counterproductive to the cause of power.
Interesting. So saying she has to be a leader isn't necessarily feminine.
That was the argument. These critics argued that, not every woman is a leader, and it's not anti-feminist to want to fall in love, to want to get married, to want to stay at home, to be soft, to want to be a homemaker.
Right. Those desires don't diminish a woman's value.
Exactly. They contended that these desires don't diminish value. They also pointed out that the original Snow White, though often seen as passive, still exercises a surprising degree of autonomy within. Furthermore, with active female protagonists now the norm in media, this modern approach was seen by some as far from original and nothing special. It lost its intended impact.
It's a valid point. If every female protagonist needs to be a girl boss, as it were,
yeah,
it could become very boring. People, at the end of the day, just want a good movie.
Yeah.
Not necessarily to be preached at.
Absolutely. The focus shifted from the quality of the storytelling to the message, and that rubbed a lot of viewers the wrong way, indicated a miscalculation in audience reception.
And her comments about the prince stalking Snow White,
also deemed unwarranted, and demonstrated a further lack of affection for the source material. And then there's that moment with her co-star.
Oh, right. The Prince actor Andrew Burnap.
Yes. In a move widely seen as highly unprofessional, Zegler made dismissive comments about him, joking, all of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby.
Yikes. It's not great.
Not great at all. And that type of remark could very well have influenced subsequent reshoots that, ironically, actually ended up expanding his role.
So did she ever try to walk these comments back?
Eventually, yeah. Zegler did try to backpedal, clarifying her comments and expressing sadness at how they were but as our sources state, by then it was far too late. The damage was...
The narrative was set.
Completely. It was even suggested that Disney might have instructed Zegler to really sell the fact that her character is much bigger than the original, maybe to justify those.
And Gadot echoed similar sentiments.
Gadot echoed similar things in interviews, too. If this were true, Disney arguably had a moral obligation to back her up.
You think so?
But they didn't. Instead, they engaged in damage control by having her later emphasize her love for the original, which came across to some as heavily scripted and maybe not entirely genuine.
And the backlash against Zegler herself was pretty intense, wasn't it?
Oh, incredibly intense and deeply personal. It included, some valid criticism of her comments, sure, but it also devolved into just outright nastiness, body shaming, misinterpretations of her older vlogs.
Like taking things out of context.
Yeah. Exactly. For instance, an emotional vlog she posted about her internal struggles, recorded before all these controversies erupted, was taken by critics as a display of delusional narcissism and refusal to take responsibility, even though she explicitly warned her audience about context in the video itself.
That's rough. And it took a toll on her.
The intensity of this negativity truly took a severe toll on Zegler. She spoke publicly about having an anxiety attack before public appearances, remembering how difficult the previous year had been.
Wow.
She even admitted to considering what surgery to get for people to finally stop calling me ugly on the internet.
Oh my God, that's heartbreaking.
It really is. It highlights the immense pressure and personal cost when a public figure becomes the focal point of such widespread and often venomous online criticism. It's a harsh lesson in navigating public scrutiny in the digital age.
Okay, so as if the film didn't have enough internal struggles and PR disasters.
You couldn't make this stuff.
It eventually found itself caught in a geopolitical crossfire, specifically the Israel-Palestine conflict, which brought an entirely new layer of controversy and public scrutiny impacting both its its lead stars.
Yeah, this deeply divisive issue impacted both lead actresses, but in very different...
Let's start with Rachel Zegler.
Okay, so Zegler, for her part, made a highly emotional Instagram post following the 2024 U.S. election, denouncing Donald Trump and his supporters, saying they should know no peace.
Whoa. Strong words again.
Very strong. She later apologized after conservative backlash, but more directly related to the Middle East conflict, she publicly voiced support for Palestinians.
How so?
She signed an open letter to President Joe Biden calling for a ceasefire and even tweeted "Free Palestine," which she later took down, reportedly after producer intervention.
And these actions were
widely seen as unprofessional, risking the film's bottom line and the careers of others involved by injecting highly charged political opinions into a...
Did Disney react?
Disney eventually had to hire a social media advisor to vet her post. And Mark Platt's son, Platt, being a producer on the film, later criticized Zegler, calling her immature and narcissistic, claiming her actions clearly hurt the film's box office.
Okay, so that's Zegler's side. What about Gal Gadot?
On the other side of the political spectrum, you have Gal Gadot. As a prominent Israeli celebrity who served in the IDF,
Right.
She spoke out in support of Israel, condemning Hamas's October 7th attack and advocating for hostages. She even co-organized a documentary screening about the attack.
And how was that received?
It was met with protests and even a physical altercation outside.
Wow. So her stance had real-world consequences, too.
Definitely.
Sure.
Her association and support for Israel led to sets and premieres of her films being targeted by pro-Palestine protests. Her Hollywood Walk of Fame star was even defaced.
Brief.
Some of her films, including Snow White, were banned in Lebanon, and calls for boycotts against Snow White were labeled anti-Semitic by...
But it wasn't entirely one-sided criticism for her either, was it?
No, it's important to note she also faced criticism from some right-wing Israelis for condemning the killing of innocent Palestinians and calling for... It really highlights how nuance gets lost in such an emotionally charged conflict.
And crucially, unlike Zegler, Gadot kept her politics separate from the film.
That's the key difference reported in our... Gadot did not mix her political statements directly with the film's promotion, maintaining a clear separation.
So with these opposing stances, feud rumors started.
Inevitably, due to their opposing political stances, rumors of a feud between Zegler and Gadot began to circulate.
Fueled by what?
Fueled by Zegler's noticeable lack of mentioning Gadot in social media posts about the film, and apparently a brief repost of a Zegler condemnation on Gadot's official Twitter account, though it's unclear who manages that account directly.
So did they actually get along on set?
Insiders claim they got along during production. They appeared together early on, but their later interviews showed, let's say, less warmth, and their promotional appearances were extremely obviously conducted separately.
Right. And there were security concerns, too.
And even more concerning, yes. Gadot reportedly received a huge spike in death threats after one of Zegler's posts.
Oh, my God.
Leading Disney to hire more security for Gadot. An insider claimed that Zegler didn't understand the repercussions of her actions, which just underlines the severity of the real-world impact of these public statements.
It's a really dangerous intersection of entertainment and global politics.
Absolute. A mind #8, the premiere and the inevitable flop. So given this relentless stream of controversy, the public scrutiny,
The political stuff, the casting stuff, the production stuff.
Disney's strategy for the film's premiere was, perhaps predictably, an attempt to minimize any further negative attention.
Damage control mode.
Full damage. They decided to cancel a traditional red carpet premiere, drastically scaling back the LA event.
No press.
No press invited. Only a few photographers, any interviewers, were employed directly by Disney.
Wow.
And get this, the entrance to the theater itself was even hidden from public view by tall hedges on movable platforms.
Hiding the premiere.
Yeah.
That's something.
It's a stark indicator of a studio just desperate to control the narrative, avoid any more awkward questions or bad publicity.
Did they have a UK premiere?
A customary UK premiere wasn't even held at all.
Just skipped it entirely.
Skipped it. And during the LA screening, Zegler and Gadot were reportedly mostly kept apart. Zegler was seated 2 rows ahead of Gadot, possibly to avoid any potential tension up.
Yikes. So the actual premiere, the first proper showing.
The actual scaled-back premiere eventually took place in Spain on March 12th, ahead of its wider release.
Okay, so after all this time, 9 years in development?
About that, yeah.
Countless delays, on-set disasters, this unprecedented series of controversies. Did the movie find any redemption upon its release? Did people actually like the film itself?
The material we analyzed is pretty clear on this. Most professional critics offered negative or lukewarm at best, just a consistently unfavorable picture from the critics.
Okay, critics weren't thrilled. What about audience?
The audience reaction was even more brutal. The film was immediately review bombed to all hell.
Review bomb?
Yeah, where people intentionally give it low scores online. It very quickly became one of the worst-rated movies of all time on
Worse than The Room?
Reportedly rated even below famously terrible films like The Room.
Wow.
IMDb actually had to add an unusual activity disclaimer. Its ratings shows you how extreme the
So what caused that? Just trolls?
It was likely a perfect storm, a combination of coordinated troll activity, sure, but also genuine fallout from the numerous controversies swirling around the film, the personal criticism of Zegler, and ultimately the undeniable fact of the film's poor quality.
So even beyond the drama, the film itself just wasn't good.
That seems to be the consensus, yeah. And it's easy to get caught up in all the external controversies, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's like a soap opera.
But what's truly fascinating here is that even if you strip away all that public drama, the film was just plagued with these deeply weird, detrimental creative decisions.
Decisions that suggested.
Well, some sources suggested things like internal sabotage or maybe just creative laziness. But the bottom line is the Snow White remake was quite simply bad. Pretty fucking awful, even on its own merits, regardless.
Okay, that's a stark assessment. So let's talk about those creative failures. Starting with the visual. Our sources describe them as an assault on the senses.
Yeah, that's a direct quote. Everything looked flat, uninspired, and boring. Often either undersaturated or oversaturated, leading to this blurry, indistinct appearance overall.
And there was that weird filter thing.
Yes, a major culprit was an overly done, blurry filter applied to the edges of many shots.
Why?
Apparently, it was so distracting and messed with your sense of depth perception. And it wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate post-production.
Seen as lazy.
Perceived as lazy compensation for piss-poor cinematography, or maybe to make it easier to composite CGI. It really highlights a recurring issue in modern blockbusters, relying on post-production fixes for fundamental flaws in how it was shot.
And the CGI itself, the animal.
Even the CGI animals, while maybe detailed if you looked closely, just didn't look real. They appeared artificial and off-putting.
And the not dwarves.
The not. Visually, they were described in our sources as garden gnome-looking motherfuckers with massive heads.
Like video game sheet.
Exactly, like playing big head mode in a shooter. They completely lacked the distinctiveness of their animated counter. And even in a critical scene, like Snow White eating the poisoned apple, the CGI translation of the original's emotional impact was just utterly ineffective, flat.
And the overall design, costumes, set.
The overarching design felt too clean and artificial. Clothes and sets looked too neat and machine-made, like a Disneyland exhibit, rather than a real or even a fantasy realm. Snow White's perfectly clean dress, even after supposedly being imprisoned or running through a forest. The love interest's two perfectly groomed hair and weirdly modern. The evil queen's outfits were described as unintentionally ridiculous. Even the magic mirror reportedly...
Worse than Shrek. Ouch.
Yeah, this combination created this pervasive, uncanny valley effect, making the film discomforting to look at, leaving viewers feeling tired and disoriented. Ultimately, an assault on the senses.
And it didn't look like $350 million on screen.
It absolutely did not justify it, despite some pointless Dutch angles thrown in, presumably to feign artistic merit.
Okay, visuals were a mess. What about the audio, the music?
Beyond the visuals, the audio and musical aspects also fell surprised. The songs were described as the opposite of energizing, with lyrics are a joke. The choreography, nothing to write home.
And the sound design itself
suffered from a similar artificiality. When the magical creatures sang, they harmonize a little too well, like perfectly produced studio vocal, failing to capture the natural of their environment, like a cave.
Auto-tune.
Oh, the auto. There was excessive and bad auto-tune. It was aggressively applied, creating this robotic and artifact-laden sound.
Even on Rachel Zegler, she can sing.
That's the baffling part. Even Rachel Zegler, a demonstrably good singer, was reportedly over-auto-tuned, while Gal Gadot's singing was described, rather bluntly as fucking terrible, even with all these effects.
And they recorded vocals live. Why?
That was another unusual decision. Recording vocals live on set rather than using cleaner studio recorded versions laid over it was seen as mostly unnecessary, added nothing to the quality, and seemed to just create more audio problems than it solved.
Okay, moving on to the acting and characterization. Even Rachel Zegler's visual portrayal, beyond the fairest debate, got criticized.
Yeah, specifically her look. She wore a wig to mimic the original's iconic hairstyle.
It's a black bob.
Exact, which was described as fucking terrible, and compared to Lord Farquaad from Shrek, or even Chewbacca's ballsack. Even CGI touch-ups apparently couldn't save it. And there was an overly aggressive beauty filter applied only to her.
Just to her.
Just to her, apparently, creating this weird temporal blur around her mouth when she spoke, making her look uncanny, almost AI-esque,
Uncanny Valley again.
Her facial expressions were often called bizarre and inappropriate for the scenes, making her look like she had what's sometimes called the Hasberg jaw, that distinctive facial feature, like an overbite.
Right, the royal thing.
Yeah. Yet, bafflingly, nobody corrected her on it during filming, according. She was accused of overacting and lacking the acting ability or charisma needed for a lead role like Snow White.
And Gal Gadot is the queen.
She definitely lives up to her reputation for bad acting, apparently, often overdoing. One source said the animated queen was so much more animated than her.
Which is saying something about a live actor versus animation.
Isn't it? Gadot apparently gave a better performance when disguised as the old hag, but even then her voice still sounded too youthful.
So the overall cap.
The general consensus among critics was everyone is mediocre to shit, but maybe due to the awful material, highlighting how a weak script sink even a talented.
Which brings us to the script. Perhaps the most damning critique revolved around its narrative failure, what our sources aptly call a plot zarbomba.
Yeah. The screenwriter, apparently a professor of writing at multiple universities, somehow produced a script with so many huge plot holes.
How bad are we talking?
This led to the scathing assessment that every character in this movie is a fucking
wow.
Logic just does not exist in this or in their brain. And the film assumes the audience is a bunch of idiots. The story itself was described as safe, boring, and utterly unappetizing. It suggests just a fundamental misunderstanding of basic story.
Could you give some specific examples of the plot holes?
Oh, they're numerous and glaring. Just if the king disappears after the queen warns of a fall. No follow-up, no explanation. Gone.
Okay.
Snow White, imprisoned but somehow visible to palace staff and the public, is nearly forgotten. Yet she mysteriously suffers Stockholm Syndrome and never even attempts escape. Jonathan, the bandit leader, breaks into the castle for potato instead of, I don't know, confronting the queen who presumably wronged his people.
Potatoes. Seriously.
Potatoes. And Snow White exhibits extreme naivety regarding the very obviously evil woman queen. It's just a series of basic narrative lapses that defy belief.
What about character logic?
Then there's the inconsistent character logic. The huntsman is told to bring back Snow White's heart. He brings back an apple instead of, say, a pig's heart, the original.
An apple.
An apple. And the queen inexplicably doesn't bother to check the box. The not dwarves have magical gem-finding powers that are never used again or become relevant.
Random power.
Random power dropped immediately. Snow White, unlike her animated counterpart who offered to clean to earn her keep, apparently teaches them to clean for themselves, making her come across as more of a parasite. Whoa. And despite living together for 274 years, the dwarves are impossibly messy and constantly argumentative. It's almost as if the script intentionally created obstacles just to make the character.
And Jonathan, the love interest.
His character is particularly jarring. He's dismissive of the king's fate and Snow White's importance, then ungrateful for her saving his life later, and the true love's kiss antidote creates a massive plot hole.
How so?
The queen knows Jonathan is Snow White's love interest, yet she doesn't kill him, even though she's shown to be perfectly capable of murder. It makes no sense.
And Snow White eating the apple.
Her decision to immediately take a bite of the poisoned apple, despite apparently planning to leave the dwarf soon, just makes her appear really.
But the real plot zarbomba.
The real killer. It involves the magic mirror's shifting definition of fairest. Initially, it's clearly about physical beauty. That's why the queen is jealous. Later, when Snow White is supposedly the fairest, the mirror reveals that beauty comes from deep within for her. And she's fairer because she's the most just and can become a fantastic leader.
But was that shown? Her being just? Or a lead?
That's the problem. It was never established through her actions, which implies the mirror was either lying earlier or that literally everyone else in the entire kingdom, before Snow White did one kind act, had less inner beauty than the evil queen, which makes absolutely no logical sense whatsoever.
It completely contradicts itself.
Shatters the film's own internal logic. A total thematic contradiction.
Any other weird plot point?
Well, the queen's death by smashing the mirror is unexplained, and Snow White's coronation involves everyone wearing white, which our sources liken to Jonestown shit.
Oh dear.
Her final triumph feels completely unearned, as her leadership, such as it is, only works because, as the analysis suggests, everyone else is a fucking idiot.
So summing up the creative side.
In sum, the film was a mess, described as ugly, boring, overly long, unfunny, sounds terrible, is acted terribly, and has atrocious writing. It lacks the style, impact, and technical innovation of its predecessor, watering down everything exciting and interesting about the original.
And adding extra characters didn't help.
Even adding extra characters like the bandits was pointless. They lacked depth. Their roles were drastically reduced in reshoot, suggesting they could have been entirely removed without any real consequence. This wasn't just a bad film, it's a textbook example of how not to adapt a classic.
So, After all the drama, the controversies, the undeniable creative missteps, how did the Snow White remake actually fare financially at the box office?
Well, it was nothing short of a financial disaster.
Rebombed.
And Snow White bombed at the box office, becoming one of Disney's worst-performing live-action remakes.
How much did it lose?
It was estimated to lose over $115 million, and our sources suggest this figure is likely even higher, as its worldwide box office performance remained well below expectations. The image of Rachel Zegler watching the movie in an empty theater, which surfaced online somehow, felt depressingly ironic in this context, really summing up the film's commercial fate.
Was there any silver lining financially?
Interestingly, despite all the controversies, the movie curiously overperformed above expectations in some more conservative U.S. states.
Yeah.
It was odd.
But did the controversies cause the bombing?
Box office analysts actually claim that the controversies actually had little impact on the overall performance.
Really? What did they blame then?
They cited other more fundamental issues, things like the film's older source material, maybe not connecting, its poor presentation, the visual and audio problems we discussed, and its general failure to connect with a modern general audience, suggesting the core problems were more artistic and strategic than purely political or controversial.
So the terrible reviews and bad word of mouth mattered more.
Likely played a huge part, yeah. The dismal performance had immediate consequences, too. It led to its early release on Disney Plus S-Sphere, indicating a quick, almost desperate exit from theatrical circulation. Cut their losses.
And it impacted other remakes.
Other planned live-action remakes, notably Tangled, were reportedly put on hold due to Snow White's financial disappointment, suggesting a pause for reflection within the studio, at least temporarily.
But here's where it gets truly contradictory, almost absurd. Did Snow White kill the remake trend?
Not even close. The notion that Snow White would put an end to Disney's live-action remakes aged poorly and quite rapidly.
Why? What happened next?
Disney's very next live-action remake, Lilo and Stitch, which was also, by the way, very poorly received by fans of the original, apparently grossed over $1
billion after the Snow White disaster.
$1 billion, which suggests that absolutely nothing was learned from the Snow White debacle in the broader context of Disney's remake strategy. One massive failure does not necessarily deter the overall corporate direction if the next one hits big.
Wow. Okay, so reassessing blame. What about Rachel Zegler in the end?
When it comes to reassessing, our research actually led to increased sympathy for Rachel Zegler, at least to some extent. While the vitriol she directed was sometimes overblown, didn't help herself, or the movie, or comments.
Right, she made mistakes.
Struggling to balance that outspoken passion with professionalism, her behavior was attributed by some sources more to being immature and lacking a filter rather than genuine narcissism. She was a young actress thrust into an impossible...
And crucially, she wasn't solely responsible for the film's failure.
Critically, no. She was not solely or entirely. She didn't write this movie. She wasn't responsible for its creative decisions. And importantly, the people that mattered were on board. Disney execs approved the direction.
So the movie would have been bad anyway.
Our sources conclude that the movie still would have been shot, even without her contract. And it's important to clarify, wokeness wasn't the sole cause of failure. Other woke films, including Disney's own, have performed exceptionally well.
Right. And it wasn't just fewer people going to cinemas.
Nor was it due to fewer people in theaters overall, as other films around that time, like The Minecraft apparently, were hugely successful.
So the blame on Zegler was overblown.
The more research that went into this analysis, the more apparent it became that Zegler's responsibility grossly over-exaggerated, sometimes, perhaps, by those with a financial interest in deflecting blame away from creative or executive.
So who is?
Ultimately, no one factor or one person was sole. It was a complicated convergence of many factors, some even beyond anyone's control, like the pandemic or strike.
So even if they'd cast differently, or fix the visuals?
Hypothetical changes, a different cast, better visuals, maybe even achieving Middle East peace wouldn't have fixed the underlying issues of a fundamentally bad script and a pointless and boring horror was rotten.
So the big lesson from Snow White.
This Snow White remake truly proves that old adage, no such thing as bad publicity, is unequivocally false.
Yeah, this seemed like pretty bad publicity.
It became a film remembered more for the surrounding shitstorm than for the movie itself. What this teaches us, maybe, is a valuable lesson in the importance of knowing when to shut the fuck up, and perhaps when to simply leave a beloved classic well enough alone.
So what does this all mean for us? Our deep dive into Snow White's live-action remake. Wow, it's been a wild ride. Uncovering layers of controversy and creative missteps that are almost Shakespearean in scale.
It really is quite the saga.
It's a stark testament, isn't it, to how even the biggest studio, armed with the most beloved intellectual property, can just stumble spectacularly when the vision is lost or maybe misguided start.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, It really highlights the immense challenges of reimagining cultural touch. It's not just about updating a story for a modern audience.
No.
It's about navigating these complex expectations around representation, respecting the original source material, managing the public narrative, all while, crucially, producing a genuinely good film people actually want to watch.
That's the hard part.
It raises an important question, I think, for any creative endeavor. When does the pursuit of a modern message overwhelm the fundamental elements of compelling story, leading ultimately to a product that almost no one?
And for you, our listener, this serves as just a fascinating case study in the power of public perception, the pitfalls of corporate decision-making, and that delicate balance required to create art that truly resonates. It's a vivid reminder that sometimes the biggest lessons come from the biggest disasters, offers a cautionary tale for anyone looking to reinterpret a classic, maybe.
Indeed. Perhaps the lasting legacy of the Snow White remake won't be found on screen at all, but in the profound lessons it offers about authenticity, accountability, and that intricate dance between artistic vision and audience.
Makes you wonder, does what truly makes a story timeless? And what are we truly willing to sacrifice in the name of reinvention?
A question worth pondering.